Y'all okay? If there's ever been a better endorsement for change, that was it. Okay? Yeah. So, as I said earlier, this is our 11th Easter, and that means this is my 11th Easter talk. Now, every year, I look to see what have I said already in 10 talks about Easter. But what I've realized is that there were the first 5 years, and I looked back and looked at all those talks, because I keep them all because, I want to go back and look to see what was I like then. It was pretty good. But they were kind of, the early years talks about everything I knew about Easter and how I grew up Catholic and I was the perfect little Catholic boy and what Easter meant. And, I talked a lot about Good Friday and flunking geography and history and science in one report card. And it landed on Good Friday. And I realized watching the Stations of the Cross that it wasn't going to be any better for me when I got home. So I used all of those stories for those first 5 years. And then the 6th year happened. And then after the 6th year, there were the next 5 years, and this is the 5-year mark of that. So, just a little emotional today, that song that Charles sang. Somebody said, is that a new song? And I actually closed my first big nightclub act when I was starring on Broadway. I did this big nightclub act at Les Mouches, which was a big club in New York City. And I was the headliner, and I closed my show with Everything Must Change. And at 25, I'm sure I was singing about something I knew nothing of. I just sounded good. And I would just sing, everything must change. The young become the old, but I'm young, so who cares? The young becomes the old. Now I'm sitting here as the 60-year-old going, now I know what that song is about. It's like, So, but that fifth, 6th year, Barbara, could you hand me my water there? Right there. Thank you, Karen. That 6th year of Easter talks, and most of you know this, I had to come in here on Easter Sunday and tell you that I had cancer. And that was no easy thing for me. What I didn't tell anyone was that I had stage 4 cancer, and that it was what it looked like was not pretty. But I never went there. I just didn't. But it was Easter Sunday, so I came in and talked about Rise Above It. And, as Charles sang that song, and he got to the very powerful part of we don't walk the way we used to, we don't talk the way we used to, we don't think the way we used to, we don't believe what we used to believe. I can honestly say that 6th Easter was a turning point in my life. I no longer talked the way I used to. I no longer walked the way I used to. I no longer believed any of the crap that I used to believe because I could not afford to. And something came up that said you cannot afford to think anything that you used to think that doesn't serve you. And so that was that year. And that 6th year of this ministry was a very interesting year. How many of you were here for that year? So yeah, it was a pretty interesting year to watch me go to that 130-pound guy in the middle of radiation and chemo and then come back to what stands before you today. But you know what? That's just the physical that changed. What changed inside of me was not as a parent, but it's becoming more and more apparent, certainly to my students, and what I believe now, and where I want us to go. And on Easter, it's a perfect time to talk about that, because Ernest Holm basically said the resurrection is getting rid of the beliefs that no longer serve you and rising to a new idea of who and what you are, of who and what each one of us is. So last year, I gave a talk called The Renegade, about Jesus being a renegade. And that a renegade is someone who no longer wants to live in the confines and the conditions and the rules of any given group. So they're considered a renegade. And I've been considered a renegade my whole life. I've always joined groups that I then no longer wanted to be a part of. And it was just because I'd get in there and I'd see a better way. I just always do. Whatever I do, I see a better way because there's something inside each and every one of us, right, Tara? There's something in us that's saying, there is a better way. There is more. There's more for you to be. There's more for you to know. There's more for you to express and experience. And this box isn't cutting it for you anymore. Now, the boxes are good while you're in them, if you're in them for a reason. But when they're no longer fit, when they no longer work, you got to get out of the box. Which is the whole idea of out-of-the-box thinking. The whole reason why Ernest Holmes said we must be open at the top, because I think the man understood he was in a box, and his only way out was through the top. Open the top of this lid, because he did not want a religion formed around him. He did not want a religion. Religion is another name for box. Every religion is a box containing their members inside an ideology that everyone embraces, but after a while, the resurrection happens, and something inside says, oh my God, there's so much more. Break down those walls. That's the renegade. But you know what I've realized? I'm not really a renegade. I no longer am going to identify with this concept of renegade that I just last year gave a talk on, and just a few weeks ago discussed what a renegade is. Because ultimately, a renegade, if that's what a renegade is, every single one of us better take that to heart. That when it's time, move on. Really move on. So the title of my talk today, and this was funny because the theme of this month, Decide What Matters, coming after Do It Now, Decide What Matters. I went into Karen's office to give her the title because she's always hounding me during the week. What's your title? What's your title? What's your title? I'm not leaving here without it. What's your title? And I am leaving here, so what's your title? So I went in to give her my talk title, and my talk title was going to be What's the Matter? Because it was about our theme. And then all of a sudden I went, oh my God, it's Easter. Let me think about that. And I had to really think about it because I didn't want to just come in and do my theme talk for what we're doing this month. And on the way from Karen's office back to my office, something overcame me. And it was the title of my talk today. And it was In the Garden of Gethsemane. Just so that you think we're not going to talk about Jesus today, we are. It is Easter after all. So, in the Garden of Gethsemane. And the funny part was when the title came to me, I was like, what is that about? What am I supposed to say about that? That I sang it? Gethsemane? That I understand it because I played Jesus? No, I understand it much more today than I ever did playing Jesus. But in the Garden of Gethsemane. And this is all about change. And Jesus, Gethsemane happened on Friday night, Good Friday night. At the Last Supper, Jesus and the apostles were having a rollicking good time in the upper room. Now just think about that. In the upper room, at the highest level of consciousness. That's where Jesus took them for the Last Supper, in order to tell them all, really, here's what's going to happen and here's what's going on. And in that upper room, he came clean on, you're going to betray me, and you're going to forget that, you're going to say I didn't exist, and one of you is basically going to turn me over. And that's what happened in that upper room. And I just know that Jesus was really contemplating the idea of change in that moment. It's all changing after this. It's all going to change. And whenever you have something in your life that says to you it's all going to change, you have an opportunity. You either go, as Karen said, to the conditions, or you go to the upper chamber, to the upper room. Or as Emerson says, to the Concord, to that place in the highest level of consciousness. So Jesus then asked Peter, John, and James to go with him down to the garden to pray. He took those three apostles down to the garden, Peter, John, and James. And they kept falling asleep. He kept trying to pray. He'd turn to say something, they'd be out. And that's probably because they drank a lot of wine at the Last Supper. I don't think Jesus took it personally. But in the Garden of Gethsemane, and here's what's funny, the account of the Garden of Gethsemane comes from the apostles, all of whom were asleep. So how much can I really believe what they tell us? I mean, they were asleep, for God's sake, and now they're telling me what he did while they were asleep. So it's all conjecture. So now this apostle James is going to tell you what I think he did while they were sleeping. So Because I wanted to be an apostle. How many of you wanted to be an apostle? Didn't we all want to? No, okay. I wanted to be an apostle. So, Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, which, by the way, is not a beautiful garden. Just so you know, when you look at it, it was a rock garden. It was desert, folks. It was not some beautiful botanical garden that he went into to be inspired by nature. It was some place he went, and I believe the reference to the upper room and the Garden of Gethsemane is that he literally took his consciousness down to earth, down to that place where he knew what was going to happen. How many of you have your own Gethsemane? How many of you are sitting right now in a life that you think you know what's going to happen? And it may not be pretty. And you may be contemplating conditions that you wish weren't going on in your life. So what Jesus did was he came down to the Garden of Gethsemane and he started talking to God. And the first thing he said to God is, take it away. How many of you want to do that? How many times do you just want to say, take this away from me? I don't need this. But you know what? When I came here and told everybody I had cancer, I would have loved to have said, take this away from me. I don't need this. But clearly, I needed that because I created that. And it brought me to where I am today. And I learned a lot from that. And I continue to learn a lot from that. And I don't talk the same way anymore. And I don't put up with as much stuff in my life that I used to put up with. And that continues to grow and evolve. So there is Jesus down there, and he's saying to God, take it away. And he's thinking about the change. He's saying, oh my God, don't you think he's possibly thinking to himself, how did I fail? How did I fail at this? How did I fail? How did I turn some of my closest friends into enemies? How did I turn people that I love into people that are now betraying me? How did I do that? I'm sure that's going through his mind. How did I so believe in life everlasting, and now when it's my turn, I'm afraid? How did that happen? So what Jesus really did in the Garden of Gethsemane was really bring the divine and the human into one perfect context and get clear that I and the Father really are one. Because by the end of that, he then said, according to this apostle James, he then said, I'm ready. I get it. I get it. This is what I've created. This is what I'm here to do. And I will do it to the best of my ability. And then it all unfolded, as we all know. Now, in the Catholic Church, in the Christian Church, you can't be called a Christian unless you believe in Jesus as your Savior. That is the identifying marker. Because I have very often said that I do consider myself a Christian, but I do not consider myself a Christian that believes anybody was here to save me. I believe the Christ consciousness is found in Buddha. It's found in Mahatma Gandhi. It's found in everyone, in Martin Luther King. It's found in Barack Obama. It is found in who was his opponent? Mitt Romney. It's found in everyone, the Christ consciousness. And we have to be about that. If we're not about that, then everything Jesus came to teach us is kind of in vain. And we have unfortunately turned this man into someone that he didn't want to be. He did not come here to be a leader. And here's what's really interesting. The apostles, talk about change. The apostles had to change so much. These people were waiting for a Messiah. These people were expecting Jesus to come in on a horse and literally be their warrior. And he came in and went, not happening. I think Jesus was very much in touch with his feminine side. I think Jesus came in and said, you've got to love these people. Love? You're supposed to go slaughter them. You know how this works, Jesus. Come on. Get your chutzpah together here. Go out there, slay everyone that bothers us, and then we'll start over. Jesus is like, no, they're actually here in the position they're in to teach you something. Every betrayer, every incident, every challenge is here to teach you something. Every disease, every relationship that falls apart, it is here to teach you something. And here's what it's here to teach you. And this is really what he came to say. Because this is one of his quotes. love one another, even as I have loved you. And I believe that word even as I have loved you, I believe that word is there because Jesus loved through to the end. Through to the end. Even as he is being literally slaughtered, he's loving the people to his right and left and asking forgiveness for them. Love only. This is what this man came here to teach, to love only. And literally forgive everything. If that man can forgive everything, really shouldn't we have an easier time? I mean, we may feel like we've been crucified at some time, but we really haven't. So if he can do it, and that's really what he came here to be. A beautiful symbol, someone that really shows us who we are, somebody that really allows us to understand who we are inside, that deep Christ consciousness that is within me. And then remember who you are, which is really what I believe this entire day is about. Being able to remember who we are. So this month, the theme, decide what matters. Karen said it earlier. There are many options for my life. And I'm just going to talk about me personally. I have many options in my life that I can choose to be and choose to do. I have many things I can put my energy into. I have many possibilities. I have people from all sides saying, come do this, do this, do this, do this. But you know what? Life is about what matters to me, not to the world around me. And that's for you too. Life is about what matters to you. So this month is your opportunity to ask yourself, what matters to me? And here's the thing. Right now, if you want to know what matters to you, look at your life. What have you been putting your attention into? What might matter to you is all of your problems. That might be what matters to you. What matters to you might be complaining, if any of you are complainers. That might be what matters to you because that's what you're putting your attention on. So really go deep this month. Really soul search. Ask yourself, what matters? And here's the best part of this. If you ask yourself from a visioning place, if you really take some time to get quiet and just say, what matters to me? And then listen. Can't argue with the divine when it shows up. When it shows up and says, this is what matters. This is what matters most. Because there are things in the conditional world that matter and that we have to take care of. But here's the real truth, and this is what this song is all about. Everything must change. But then he goes to, rain comes from the sky, clouds, the sun lights up the sky, and hummingbirds will fly. Can I tell you this morning, as I was sitting at my computer looking at my notes for what I was going to say today, a hummingbird not only came by me, but stopped in my window and looked at me, and I was really freaked out. I was, because first of all, they don't land, they kind of just stand there, and I'm at the computer, and I was like, I got it, I'm going to bring you up, I promise. There are things in life that we can be sure of, and Karen said it too, an already established premise. What are you sure of? Everything's going to change, folks. Everything in your life is going to change. Your body's going to change. Your hair is going to change. Everything about you is going to change. Your relationships are going to change. Your financial status is going to change. It's just going to keep getting better and better and better, yes? Right. But that's change. Why does change have to be bad? You know, you may get healthier. You will get healthier. Your body will get more vibrant. Look at Reverend Nancy. This woman is more vibrant than most people I know, and she is, I'm not telling how old you are, but she is really proving a point here. Right, Nancy? I have to do it, Jack. And then here's Jack. And can I say how old you are? Sure, I'll talk to you later. I will anyway. This man is 90, tell me if I'm wrong, 93 years old. 94 years old. And he's here every Sunday, sitting right here. So here's somebody who actually could probably get up here and tell you how much changes over a lifetime, over 94 years being on this planet. I know for me, 60 years on this planet, so much has changed. My children live in a world very different than I lived in. They are interconnected through and through. Did you remember, some of us, there was no such thing as cell phones. Remember the first cell phone? It was like a telephone booth. You had to carry it around with you, right? I remember when there were car phones, when they first invented. I was like so excited. Car phones, oh my God. And now look at us. Look at us. And look where we're going. And that means we have to get with the change. We have to be willing to change. But more importantly, and this is really my message today, more important than the change is that which doesn't change. Because that's what we're here celebrating today. When Karen Mitchell gets up here and sings, "My Soul Sings Out," that touches something that will never change. And when you feel that, when you're emotionally connected to that, it's because there's something in you that is so solid, so primal, that when you hear it, that's what doesn't change. And the fear of change is because we are not solid in understanding what doesn't change. So I'm okay with everything as it changes. I'm okay with whatever goes on in church. I'm really great and really okay with dropping the walls of this box called church, called religion. We are morphing here into an understanding of what we do on Sundays and throughout the week, that I need to get past religion, and I want to get past the idea of church. I want to get into something that is so much more expansive, and then eventually it'll be a box and I'll be like, enough, move it on. But that's the way it works. That's what this is all about. But what will never change is that last line, remembering who I am. That will never change. And I believe that's what Jesus found in Gethsemane. I believe that at the end of that night, he was so clear on who he was, and that he came to teach love, and love does not lash out. Love loves, that's it. Love only. It doesn't mean I have to be a whipping post or a doormat. I can always choose to turn the other cheek, which I think means walk away, Renee. So that's the real message of Easter for me. Not that Jesus rose from the dead. I mean, one minister last year called me and said, "What's your Easter talk title?" I said, "I'm the Renegade." He was like, "Mine's going to be Move the Rock, Mary." I was like, is that a gay connotation? He went, "No, Mary Magdalene. She was outside. She's probably the only one that had the muscle to move it." But to me, that's the real story of this. Is not about the rock, or Mary Magdalene waiting, or Jesus coming back and talking to them on the road, or Peter's denial 3 times. How many of us have denied who we are 3 times infinity? That's what that's all about. And Jesus forgave every single time. That's my takeaway. I know who I am. I know who I am. And now, this month, it's time for all of us to decide what matters. And when you get really clear on what matters, the universe just swarms in and makes it happen. It's not about us having to do this hard work to make our lives work. Our lives work. Just like the hummingbird that just flies, just like the rain that comes from the sky, just like the sun that shines every single day, whether we see it or not, our lives work. My life works. Your life works. Your life works. Because there's an already established premise telling us that it does work. I and the Father are one. So love one another as I have loved you, even as I have loved you. That's the message. And that's what it means to rise above all of it. Namaste.